So I can't remember. Gosh, it's been amazing. I've gone through complete weather changes and clothing changes and had to put on more clothes. It's gotten chilly and warm and chilly and warm. It's raining again. First it came from the south and then the west and the east. It's kind of neat. I like having changes like that because one, as far as the rain's concerned, we need it. But two, it kind of makes you realize that a lot of times people take for granted things like the sunrise or the sunset or rain or night or day and don't really give thanks for all aspects of what God has brought into their lives. Because weather changes lots of times will strengthen plants. Like, for instance, I mentioned that because I had to bring my bulbs out and put them back in, bring them out, put them back in. Finally, I decided this year that with these plants that I'm growing for the first time here on this deck, I'm just leaving them out. You know, I'm not going to go ahead and move them inside and try to keep them warm, you know, and maybe, you know, spare it some damage from the frost or from the chill. But I'm going to put them out and let them grow in their place. Put them in their place where they should be, you know, and let them survive as they will or die off as they might. You know, that where they are is where they are. And God put them there and I'm putting my plants there, and so you know what? Maybe you're the same way. Maybe God has put you in a place where you're either going to make it or you're not. You're either going to succeed or you're going to fail. And you kind of got to live with that because that's what storms are meant to do. Whenever they're blowing a plant around, what happens is that that stalk is kind of like bending with the wind, because if it doesn't bend, it'll break. So while it's bending, it also is pulling on the roots, because it kind of has this effect of kind of like leveraging, like a lever, down what's below ground. So it makes the roots even stronger, because then they start kind of like holding on, and the dirt seems to be packed together. So it helps them to hold on, as it were. And storms in life are meant to do that to you. They're meant for you to hold on with your roots, the roots of your faith, you know, grounded right into the Word of God, that you can not name it, claim some promise, you know, like either Spurgeon said, or like, you know, a name it, claim it person might say, or exercise some faith, but rather just to exist by holding on to God with what your fingernails can, and you're just clawing with, you know, everything you got to just say, God, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to make it. And you know what? The storms pass, don't they? The wind blows, and suddenly there's a beam of sunshine comes out. And then God seems to speak in that and say, hey, you're going to make it. And then maybe another storm comes. And maybe another one. And maybe another one. But you know what? When you get old enough, in the end you find out that those storms help make you who you are. Help develop your character. Help give you some chutzpah or some strength that James talks about, that you were able to say with confidence, hey, you know what? This next storm that's coming, I'm not worried about it, because I've been through so many storms in my life that it's a piece of cake. And that's kind of like what it is with God. When you go through enough of life's experiences, He develops in you the kind of character He wants you to have, so that you can begin to minister to people. You no longer want to, you know, tell them that, hey, you know what, you're stupid for getting into that mess, but you want to help them out in some way, to strengthen them, you know, to encourage them in what they're going through, because they're being strengthened in their turmoils and their challenges and their trials. But you also have to at times put them in a pot, you know, and let them deal with it one-on-one. Sometimes you got to leave them alone and pray for them and let God do what He wills through the storm. Because that's what it's all about, is getting stronger in the days of our life that we live, and letting God accomplish His purposes in us as well as in other people. So sometimes don't be involved when God tells you to not do something, and then sometimes be there when the person asks for help, because all of us at some point in time need a little help. Consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which He hath made crooked? Ecclesiastes 7:13. Often God seems to place His children in positions of profound difficulty, leading them into a wedge from which there is no escape, contriving a situation which no human judgment would have permitted had it been previously consulted. But it was not. The very cloud conducts them thither, They have no idea what they're involved in. You may thus be involved in that at this very hour. You have no concept of what's going on and you're confused. It does seem perplexing and very serious to that degree, but it is perfectly right. It is God's will. The issue will more than justify Him who has brought you here. It is a platform for the display of His almighty grace and His almighty power. He will not only deliver you, but in doing so, He will give you a lesson that you will never forget, and to which in many a psalm and song in after days that you've gone through it, you will revert back to and remember that it was your experience. You will never be able to thank God enough for having done just as He has, according to His will for you as you've gone through the storms that are constantly in life and involving you in them in some way, in some means, in some time. You know, I'm kind of encouraged by that, because when I talk to God, I get lots of things, and God tells me a certain amount of information, but He doesn't tell me everything. I mean, it's like sometimes I don't ask Him the right questions. Sometimes I go through trials where I'm kind of like, well, Lord, I don't know what this is, but I'm not going to worry about it, so I let it go. And then eventually I look back on it and I kind of understand how God lets go of me at times to let me, in my pot, either be strengthened by the storm or fall over and be transplanted. Because sometimes those plants you were talking about, like when the wind blows, kind of gets them and bends them around, strengthens roots. Sometimes if they don't got a good root base, they don't have a good root ball that's down in there, planted in the soil, the wind will blow and it'll knock them over, and they got to be repotted, replanted. Sometimes God has to do that with you and with me, replant us so that we would have a strong foundation. And sometimes that's not so pretty, is it? I know that I've been there and done it. I've seen my foundation restored and starting over, so to speak. And having to do the first things over again. Maybe you need to do that. Maybe you need to kind of touch base with the basics, and kind of go over this territory that, maybe you got knocked over by something in your life. And now, even though you already know the truth and you're already a solid Christian, maybe you need to develop the roots. Even though you already have those roots, you need to get them planted firmly in the soil. So maybe you should go over the basics again. Maybe you should restore and reaffirm some of the things that you know are true in your life. I know that's what I'm doing. In VidDevo, we're going back over a lot of the things that we do, like the ultimate VidDevos. We haven't done a few of those in a long time, and that's because it has this beautiful intro, and then it has this wonderful salvation message that's done in pictures and song, and I'm so thrilled with it. I'm like, wow, I love this thing, because it's kind of my way of sharing the gospel, because I've done it several times in sharing a gospel message, like a salvation message, in a lot of variety of ways, because I don't think that, just 4 spiritual laws are what we do, and we do it a certain way because, somebody said so these days. But that Jesus was particular and peculiar to individual people when He gave a message to them. For in one way, if somebody was drowning, I wouldn't save them the same way as though they were going to be burned in a fire. One I would pull out, the other I'd swim with. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes it involves being involved with the person for a while. Sometimes it's just get them out of there. Different means of different opportunities, and sometimes a different message when you're presenting the gospel. So don't get caught up into this whole idea that there's one way to share the good news. There's variety. And I love that part. So in Ultimate VidDevo, we've been kind of developing that. We haven't really finished it because we have to take the time to really get it to where, we can put all with Ultimate VidDevo, we want to put all the utmost versus highest in those, because Ultimate VidDevo, utmost, ultimate, utmost, ultimate, utmost. So we put the two together and we put it with that presentation of the gospel that's an exit message. It's kind of like a radio broadcast, it's kind of, or video broadcast, kind of neat, I like that. So it'll be back, if you've been wondering. But we wanted to do like that, is to make sure the roots are there, and to reaffirm them, strongly, so that it comes across with what Jesus wants us to do. And then we want to do something else with Tozer, and that's why you haven't heard a lot of Tozer lately, is that we've been wanting to present him with grace, because Tozer is tough, but we now have an intro and we have an exit with grace abounding in it, and it just has a real beautiful feeling about it, kind of a warmness that I wanted to communicate Tozer with. So I'm kind of looking forward to getting back to those, but unfortunately right now with everything going on in our lives, even including this storm that's, hitting us and giving us the rain we need, we have to take the time, to clean up things and set things up and get them ready for summer, because people, they get distracted and go off onto tangents, and, so do we, and we need to get our house in order so that we can be even bigger and better than what we were before. So in your life, as you're learning these devotionals and videos and spending time with God, don't be afraid to recognize that you might fail, and you might have to start over, you might have to do something different, but that's okay. That is what this Christian life is about. Because you see, in the world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, Jesus said, I've overcome the world. He has, we haven't. We're going through it. But he's going to go through it with us. So maybe, just maybe, something's happening with you that's just a little too tough to handle. I understand, because I've been there. And maybe there isn't a whole lot of people around you, giving you a lot of support, and you're really wanting it. You're kind of like going too far out of your way to find it. Let me encourage you with a word from the Lord that maybe you don't need to go look for anything, because you're right where you're supposed to be. Because right now, maybe that buffering wind, that onslaught of pain or suffering, that challenging circumstance, that devastating, whatever it may be, catastrophe that you've gone through, it's really developing your roots. I know it feels hard to understand that right now, but it is. It's helping you to get back to your core being, back to the roots of your faith, back to the bottom line of who you are. And you know what? I used to practice that. Let me give you a word of what I used to do. I used to think that there was always shortcuts with God, and I think there really are. I think sometimes if we would do what we're supposed to do, it's a shortcut. So what I would do is, in order to get to the roots of my faith, I'd get rid of everything. I'd kind of like clean house and just kind of get rid of everything that was distracting me. My sins and my distractions and my toys and my whatever it may have been that kept me away from God, that was distracting me, I'd get rid of it ahead of time. So that way, I didn't have to wait for the storms of life to come. I was already cleaning house. By that time, I just stayed inside where it was warm, and I just kind of bundled up and watched the storm from the other side. I was pretty happy, because you know what? I was looking at that storm on the outside of my life, not on the inside where it was sometimes happening. Because, you see, there can be two ways. One way, you got to go through it to build up your roots, but the other way, God may take you as a beautiful plant full of blossoms of life and put you on the inside so he could show you off in his house to everyone around you. So you see, there can be more of an abundant life to your existence than you know. But maybe you're like me and you got to be out here in the cold, bundling up, sharing with others, because Jesus was done both. He knew to go to the lost sheep of the children of Israel, but he accepted all who came unto him. So don't be surprised if your experience, if it's always been a little tough and a little rough and a little kind of coarse. The reason is because you're going to go to some people that are a little rough, a little tough, and a little coarse. But if you're one of those that God has blessed and took inside, enjoy it and be blessed, because God has a place of rest eventually for all of us. Because even in the midst of the storm, we can know peace, because he's with us.